So let me talk a little bit about Alberta. So when I try to tell people in the States, like, okay, you know the continental secure energy strategy for the United States? That's the tar sands. It doesn't work without that. When they talk about reducing our reliance on foreign oil and all that stuff, that's the tar sands, the vast majority of which is flowing straight to the United States. And I try to explain to Americans like what it is. And I have a hard time. So I say, like, okay, you've got the second largest proven oil reserve on the planet. And it's underneath a major tract of one of the world's last great boreal forests. So here's what you do. You drain all the wetlands, chop down all the trees, rip the skin off of the land, scoop out megatons of oily sand at a time, dump them into pits, and then use, you know, up to a barrel's worth of natural gas and up to 4 barrels worth of water to make 1 barrel's worth of oil, which is stick in a pipeline and send to the United States. You've got cancer clusters in native communities. The Athabasca River is drying up prematurely. There's no, you know, Fort McMurray is a mess. There's a massive labor shortage. There are migrant worker issues. And their eyes just bulge out. Like, that's the gas tank for America's future? That's where we're getting our oil? That's our continental secure energy strategy? So Alberta's a front line for that reason alone, and a global player for that reason alone. And, you know, your government is maybe letting you down a little in terms of managing that resource. You know, I know you had a huge thing about the royalty rates here, and boy, that was a close one. I mean, those oil companies almost left the province. Because things are so much easier to do business in the Middle East and in Latin America these days. So, you know, and then you have the royalty review process, and your earnest premier, God bless him, comes out with the big decision, and it actually turns out that even the Edmonton Journal, this is my night for citing right-wing mainstream media sources, telling the truth, wrote that editorial last year where they actually identified that the royalty review and the royalty structure is going to end up in royalties going down from oil and gas, and particularly from the tar sands in Alberta, to $1.1 billion a year by 2009. Even when production triples to 3 million barrels a day in 2020, royalties will be stuck at the same rate they were 11 years earlier, $1.1 billion a year. I mean, that's just a crime. And so your government has got itself reelected. We're going to have to talk about this. I know it's a painful subject. I know maybe this is just a moment we were starting to think, let's move on. And I don't want to drag you too far back. But they are newly emboldened. And so the privatization agenda is really being unleashed in Alberta right now. School privatization is a front line. You've got 18 public schools that will be designed and built and financed privately. They're already from leaked documents, clearly doubling and more in budget. The process is shamefully secretive. You don't even know what's going on. These are public schools, for God's sake. And then when the schools are built, the arrangement is that the private companies will manage major maintenance, but the schools will be responsible for day-to-day maintenance. So, like, there's no chance that anything will get lost in the cracks there. How are you going to negotiate who's responsible for what? What contract on earth is going to guarantee that schools that were built for profit are run for the public interest? It just defies logic. Healthcare privatization is a front line in this province. The guy who engineered the schools P3 has moved right into your health post, and he did such a good job with those P3s for public schools that he's moved on to bigger fish. And Leipert's first comment after the election was, I've read the Mazankowski report, and the time for study is over, and in 3 months I'm coming out with my plan. Yeah, I wonder what'll be in it. I mean, we've seen this movie before, but this is a battle that we just have to fight again and again. Long-term care is a front line in a global battle against privatization right here in Alberta. Long-term care is being privatized big time in this province. You've got fewer long-term care beds now than there were in 1992. So of course there's a huge waiting list, and of course private providers are rushing in, and of course the environment is friendly for that kind of investment. So you've got assisted living centers where every service is a little extra, where healthcare is entirely for fee. And every little thing is like flying economy these days. You know, if you want a snack box in an assisted care center, that's going to be $5, please. And there are families in this province who are paying $3,000 to $5,000 a month for private care, while the province is fattening the coffers of Extendicare, a big US company, $6 or $7 million, another subsidy to big companies to run public services that we have to name as such. And daycare is a front line in Alberta. You know, you're already spending less on daycare than any other province in Canada, and you've got this lovely outfit, the ABC Corporation. For those of you who are here for the conference, you're going to be hearing much more from people who know way more about it than I do. But I can tell you that ABC is the largest child care corporation in the world. They've been expanding like crazy because capitalism is grow or die, God bless it. They're overextended like hell. Last month, ABC was pulled off the Australian Stock Exchange because they lost 40% of their stock value in 1 week because they're just not running their company well. Now in Australia, in some provinces, in one province, they own 75% of the daycare system. So if the company goes down, what happens to the children? And if the 11 daycare centers run by ABC in Alberta turn into 22, turn into 44, it's just not the kind of thing that you want to leave to market forces. But you are on the front lines here in Alberta when it comes to daycare. So it's obviously time to fight back big time. And this conference needs to launch that agenda in a serious way, in an action-oriented way. And I think one thing that is clear, it's not my role to come in from the outside and tell you how to fight your battles. I have some things to share that I've observed from other places. I have some thoughts of my own. I claim no expertise in how to defeat the agenda, but I would observe gently that from the disaster of the last election campaign in this province, you got to think seriously about changing the way that you try to make change in Alberta. There were some massive, massive mistakes. And, you know, I know it's a dispirited time. I know it's a quasi-suicidal time for progressives in Alberta. I think the only respite is in struggle and in getting active again. But I think it's really time to have a serious conversation about what went wrong. I'm not going to have it with you because it's not my place, but it has to happen in Alberta. I think the opposition parties really screwed it up. They didn't go after fundamental issues like American-style two-tier healthcare. They didn't go hard on an instant moratorium on the tar sands to get the head cleared and figure out what the hell is going to go on up there. They turned away from privatization as an issue and a discussion about using the phenomenal wealth in this province to repair the neglected public sphere. And those were disastrous decisions because those are issues that resonate with people. And you know, the unions that support Public Interest Alberta, I think, are heroes. And I think the work that goes on here is phenomenal. But I understand that there was a labor campaign that spent well over $1 million or more on a series of what I hear were attack ads against your premier, which backfired. You know, sometimes there's just like old-fashioned organizing that needs to happen, where organizations spend resources to send people into communities to talk to other people at the doorstep and just do it the way that works. And I just, you know, I blame the Ontario ad firm because as a Toronto boy, I'm safe to do that. And I know it's a crowd pleaser here. No, but seriously, I mean, there are ways to change Alberta. That whatever was tried in the last election needs to be looked at in a really critical light. And in the meantime, I think you have an opportunity to pour a huge amount of time, of energy, of struggle spirit into the battle against privatization. And I call on the forces that failed in their strategies in the last election to focus on this issue and make it the forefront that it ought to be. So let's look very briefly at the rest of the world to see what's going on in terms of turning the tide on privatization.